So again, I'm covering the Canary Islands early history because they're actually our big brother and their history is actually our history. So I'm going over it rather briefly. I'm not going to get too in depth. I'm going to cover just what I feel is important to our better understanding of where our customs and traditions come from. John here had just come back from Spain trying to get supplies for his rebellious group of crewmates. He came back with the title of King of the Canary Islands, which had been bestowed on him by Henry III of Castile after he had paid homage to him. In other words, he had changed alliances from the French to the Spanish. But his mate over here, his partner, was not happy with what he had done, and he basically abandoned him. In the 18 months that he had been gone, Gadifer had actually taken possessions of the islands that we now called Lanzarote and Fuerteventura. Gadifer, being faithful to the French crown, went back to France. Edgar, obviously, he did not care. He just kept going, and he added the island of Ferro to his tally of conquests, and he also ended up bringing people over as the Spanish, I'm gonna say this, like the Spanish tradition of just like kicking people out of their homelands as they did with the Moors and the Jews, and then brought peasants down from the north. They kind of did a similar thing. They obviously conquered and took into slavery many of the indigenous people, so they needed people to populate the area. So he brought Norman and Basque peasants, and a lot of people that do ancestry DNA will find Basque ancestry. My mother was one of them. And this can be a sign that you are actually descendant from somebody from the Canary Islands. So just to make it clear, they originally had the patronage of the French in 1402, but then France le sacó la pata, and they're like, we're not giving you any more money. So that's why John over here decided to go to Spain to get financial support. Something interesting that I found about Henry III of Castile, or Enrique el Doliente, he became king at 11 years old. So he was put under a regency, meaning that someone older, supposedly more wiser than him, would reign until he came of age. And that regency was when a lot of anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish sentiment happened, and the Jewish communities were sacked as the result of this administration. He came into full power at the age of 14, and he restored complete control to the monarchy of all the councils and the courts. He struggled with Portugal and he was successful, and he also sent emissaries to different Asian emperors. He was a very skilled and savvy teenager. But because he was constantly in ill health, he died very young, and he left an heir, John II, Isabel's father, as heir, but he was only 2 years old. Again, a regency was formed between Henry III's widow and his brother, and as always, it was a mess, but I'm not going to get into that. But this was the king that Jean Betancourt gave his alliance to, and this was how the Canary Islands ended up under Spanish rule. Betancourt actually left the governorship of the island to his nephew, Massoit de Betancourt, but this kid in 1448 sold the lordship, or the overall rulership of the island, to the Portuguese and to Prince Henry the Navigator. So this obviously caused chaos, and it was a huge crisis, a revolt that ended up lasting until 1459, when the Portuguese were finally kicked out of the islands. It wasn't until though 1479, so 20 years later, that Portugal finally recognized the Castilian control over the Canary Islands through the Treaty of Alcazovas. I hope I said that right. I'm not entirely sure.